call the June 2022 USD 350 Board of Education meeting to order. Welcome visitors. Any additions or changes to the agenda?
No.
Any motion?
Mr. President, I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Consent agenda.
We do have two additional items explained on page 24. It's different than our usual monthly, but it happens every June. About granting authority to finalize the budget, make transfers as needed, and destroy financial documents that we're legally allowed to.
Mr. President, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay. Patron comments.
Our comments aren't for everybody here, so how do you do that?
Okay, so we'll need to go to executive session for that.
Okay, is this in regard to personnel?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Last lot of meeting. What's it in?
Yeah, do it right now.
Okay.
5 minutes.
All right.
And Cindy. So if you look at the,
Top one on personnel.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's hired and fired. Hired retired.
Just leave it at personnel.
yeah, to discuss a patron comment in regard to personnel.
Mr. President, I move that the board go into executive session to discuss a patron comment about personnel pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under KLMA with Mr. Meyer and Cindy Crockett to be included, and I will return to open session at 7:07.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to go into executive session to discuss patron comments around personnel pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under KOMA with Mr. Meyer and Cindy Crockett to be included, and we return to open session at 7:07 in this room. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Call the meeting back to order. Business items, insurance policy.
Yeah, we've got, if you recall a couple years ago, we looked at the Kansas Educators Municipal Risk Pool, Risk Management Pool. They got a quote at that time, it was pretty close. Honestly anticipated seeing what had happened with EMC and other school districts over the years, that at some point we would need to be a part of that pool. There was some uneasiness about the pool at that time. I'm much less hesitant now as I've learned more about it. So we'll have two quotes tonight for one for Chase. I'll let you go through your proposal with them, with us, and then I'll let Trey turn.
I got some handouts for you guys. My name is Chase Wells. I'm with Conrady Insurance. We are out of Newton, actually. But we work with the KSB on this program. We've worked with the KSB for about, I think it's 12 years now. But Kermit was endorsed by the KSB 3 years ago. And pretty straightforward, and I'll kind of speak to each of these documents as we go through it. And actually, all these are going to be on the PowerPoint screen as well. I just figured this would be a little bit easier without it in your hand. Just start scrolling. So right now, Current has actually 88 current members. If you were to look at this program, when the KSB first joined it, they had about 20 members. So in the last 3 years, we've grown to 88 members. If I were just to dissect this list of school districts, really a lot of it started on with the larger school districts. And that was just, we were more competitive on those. As time has gone on, we've kind of worked our way down into smaller and smaller school districts. One way to think about this program is, I'm going to get into the technical details, but this is probably very similar to the way that USD 259 or Wichita Public Schools buys their coverage. We are a band of 88 districts that, band together to kind of have the same leverage that a USD 259 has. So right here, this is kind of where all the magic happens. This is the program design itself. So right off the bat, when we hear pool, self-insurance, that can be kind of scary in the sense that, we've got 88 member districts. Think about how much property we are insuring. It's a pretty large number. But this chart here details how it all works. And what's really happening here is we are only self-insuring the first $350,000 of any property type. So all of the member districts come together and they fund this loss fund over here. Say your district had a claim, you would pay your $25,000 wind and hail deductible. Then $350,000 would be pulled out of the pool. And this first layer, it would just move up the layers, right? The first layer, here we have reinsurance, is at $400,000. Then up to the next layer, this would cover all the way up to $200 million. And then finally, the third layer goes all the way up to $300 million. An important thing to note is, and also the reason for such a high number there, is we could have one storm impacting multiple districts, and that would only ever be one claim on the loss fund. So if this district were hit and say 3 others, you would each pay your deductible, but we would only take $350,000 out of the loss fund. I'm getting a little technical here. Does that fall how we can just self-insure that first $350,000? The other one thing to note here is, this is new to this year, we had to fund what we call a variable quarter property deductible. As I get into the pricing, your district's contribution to that would be $3,000. But before reinsurance ever kicks in, we will exhaust this money. This just helps us keep our reinsurance costs down. So one way that I think CURMIP has brought a lot of value into the state is that the prior to CURMIP, there's really one insurance company. It was EMC. After bringing CURMIP in this program structure, we get a lot more insurance carriers that are willing to work with schools. So you can see at the top here, we've got Chubb Bermuda on our top layer. But this shared, Chubb Bermuda. But this shared property layer here, this is of about 5 different reinsurance carriers. We've got Lloyd's of London, we used to have Travelers there, Brit. We've got a handful of carriers here. And then of course this bottom layer here is Ambridge. So when you come in with a program structure like this, you just have more interest from the reinsurance market. Whereas before our options were a little more restricted. Let's move down to the next one. These are just some first dollar coverages here. There's no crazy reinsurance scheme here. You can see each carrier there: Liberty, Lloyd's, CFC, Ironshore. One big thing to note here is that CURMIP does have a standalone $2 million limit for cyber. This is all pretty all-inclusive. If you guys were to fall victim to, say, a ransomware attack, you familiar with ransomware attack? It's been a couple in the news lately. Those have worked their way into schools. And then we also have a pollution liability policy here. This would be, what happens if you are doing a renovation and you peel back the wall and there's some mold back there? What's it gonna cost to remove that from not only the wall, but from the air afterwards? Those claims can get pretty expensive. So starting this year, the pool added $1 million in coverage for pollution. So this is our pricing sheet here. And another thing to note is that our program itself is very transparent. I mentioned we have those 88 members. We are, of course, beholden to all 88 members. Therefore, our pricing on a pro rata basis is going to be the same for every single district. Right here you have the breakdown of all of those costs. So you can see these reinsurance contracts. You can see your district's pro rata portion of those. You can see what you are paying for the endorsement by the KSB. You can see our fee right here, local agent fee, boom, right there, $5,600. Gallagher Bassett, they are the people who are administrating this pool, and you can see their fees as well. I also want to note that Gallagher has been doing this since the 60s. And whenever we talk about a pool, there's always that fear. What happens if the pool runs out of money? Well, Gallagher has never encountered that since they've been doing it. The way that they structured this pool is we are actually buying a stop loss contract that sits over our loss fund. And the easiest way to think about that is we are buying an insurance contract to protect us from the risk of exhausting our funds and having to bill our members for more funds. Any pool that Gallagher has structured in this way, they've never had an assessment, where they've never had to go out and bill their members for more money. And that has a track record all the way back until, I believe, 1960. And then, right here, so I do want to note, this pool is divided into two portions on our costs. That first portion we're looking at, those are our fixed costs. Those are the same for every member on a pro rata basis. The second portion down here, these are our variable costs. And this is going to be what funds the loss fund right here. So these will vary district to district. They're based off of your loss history. So if I were just kind of jump back to this original sheet again, our loss fund is $3.9 million. Your district's contribution to the loss fund is $10,000. And then of course, every property claim, we would take $350,000 out of the pool to pay the first portion of the claim. You want to probably scroll to the next page. And this here, I just kind of teed up kind of what I saw on your existing coverage and what Kermit brings to the table. Kermit is designed, we have to be designed to cater to the largest member in our program. Right now, the largest member is Topeka. So because of that, there's going to be some coverages here that maybe you wouldn't normally pick up, but you are going to benefit from having. A few of those are going to be flood coverage, earthquake coverage. You can see we've got $25,000 or $25 million for each of those. I do want to point out our deductibles for all perils excluding wind and hail, we are at $10,000, and for wind and hail it is at $25,000. We were to go down. Just kind of the theme throughout this is we've got expanded limits, and if there is an insurable risk for a school, we're buying the coverage. Oh, for crime, we do have $1 million limit. Pretty significant. And all the way at the bottom, I think probably the two biggest differentiators between our policy and what you currently have are right here. That is our $2 million cyber limit and our $1 million in pollution. Again, pollution would be probably the most likely scenario is if there was ever mold found in one of your buildings. I don't know if you've ever had that in your house or something like that, or the mold.
Does that cover anything else besides the mold?
Yeah, so another claim I could think of is maybe even like hauling off bad soil. I don't know if you ever had like a fuel farm at one point near your bus barns and some of that soil was contaminated and somehow the EPA got drawn to that. That could be a pollution coverage. Those are probably the main two I can think of for a school district. Maybe one of your shop programs has some kind of, probably less likely there. Mold's gonna be the big one. Yeah, I actually used to work for a contractor, and anytime there was contaminated soil, we had to put that in 50-gallon drums and ship it off to some facility where they would turn the soil. So that can be pretty costly. Seems kind of silly, but shoot, when the EPA gets involved, you're doing a lot of silly stuff. So that is really what I got, guys. Is there any questions you have coming from that right there? I would say, just in closing, when I think of the ways that we bring value to our members, there's really three ways. The first is, when we structure our program this way, we have more insurance carriers willing to work with us. So we bring a little more competition to the state. The second way is actually by taking on and retaining some level of risk. Right, we're retaining this whole loss fund over here, this $4 million and $350,000 of each property claim. By taking on that risk, there are some savings to be had. Right now, the pool is at actually, we have about $5 million in the bank that we've saved since inception. Early member districts will receive back a dividend. So, one way to kind of give you an idea what a dividend could potentially be is this loss fund, we expect to spend 60% of the funds in here each year. To this point, we've run out almost at exactly 60% year after year. So your loss fund contribution being $10,000, you could realistically expect that after 5 years membership in the program, you start getting back 40% of that each year. So you'd be looking at potentially a dividend of $4,000 5 years from now, and then into perpetuity, as long as you remember. Bear in mind, we could have a disaster year, and it would be less, and a good year would be more.
What's the most you pulled from the loss fund in a year?
The most we pulled from the loss fund year? Actually, early on, we totally exhausted the loss fund and broke into this reinsurance right here. That was probably I think that was in the 3rd year of the program, where they had just 11 members. As far as dollar amount goes, I wouldn't really be for sure. Maybe we got up to $2.5 million, something close to that. But certainly in those first years, we were a little more vulnerable to something like that, just because we didn't have, there's a lot more variance when you've got 10 members versus 90 members. But again, we have this reinsurance contract, so we never assessed a member. It was really just business as usual for those. It is worth noting that Gallagher manages pools in Missouri and Oklahoma as well. Both of those states have somewhere in the realm of 90 to 95% of districts in an association-related pool, because Oklahoma actually has 2 pools. But yeah, Kansas seems to have lagged behind the market a little bit on this concept. But clearly, growing 60 members in the last 3 years. We're paying attention. So, oh, and I never quite finished it. So 3 distinct ways we bring more competition. By self-insuring a little bit, we save some money. And then the last way, we're just a little bit more efficient on the model. You can see the breakdown of our fees. We just run a little bit leaner than a traditional fee. We don't have any advertising overhead, and things like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Trey?
There's extra.
Okay.
There's extra.
You've got 2? No, sir. Yeah. Wait a minute, I thought you did the same thing.
Yeah, there's extra.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a couple people not here.
One hand.
Yeah, only one hand
Ooh,
up.
okay.
Well, you were in your right chair, not as we got. Just saying.
It's throwing everything.
Thanks, man.
Okay, so this spreadsheet, I think you've all seen this in prior years. This is just going to compare last year's coverage to this year's renewal. So I'll just kind of go through it and notate some of the major changes, and then we can talk about any of it. But the big one would be at the very top. So the 24, the blanket property limit went from 24.3 million to 28 million. Okay, so that's about a 15-16% increase. That's because of inflation. The cost to repair or replace is more. They're giving you more coverage. You would think. I mean, it's a good thing to. I mean, it's going to create more premium, but it's a good thing to have more coverage. You want to make sure you're covered the way you need to be. So that's the big change there on the property. And then if you just scroll down a little bit, right there, yeah. The other change would be the deductible. And I think we talked about this last year. They wanted to do it last year, and I begged to hold off a year. They changed the wind hail deductible to 25. So if it's anything but wind hail, it's 10, 25 for wind hail. So that would be the other main change on the property. If you scroll down through these, you'll notice the general liability. And if you look down at the bottom, I mean, it'll show you the change, 1975 to 20. Coverages on these didn't change. The premium changed a little bit on some of these. Some of the premiums stayed flat, like on the inland marine, the premium didn't change any. General liability coverages didn't change, just the premium there. Inland marine stayed the same. If you scroll down a little further to the crime, coverages stayed the same, premium stayed the same. Auto, they didn't change with your auto. They didn't mess with your auto deductibles this year. Auto deductibles stayed the same. So no major changes on the auto. Umbrella is the same. If we go to the airs and the linebacker policy, coverage there is flat. Premiums basically flat. Cyber's the same for coverage and premium. And so really the only major changes are the property. The limit went up because of the inflation and because of the cost to repair and replace things, and then the deductible. That's the major changes. So down at the bottom, your premium last year was this, and your premium this year is that. And the other thing, so if you notice, the property limit increased 15%. The overall increase was about 6.5% total premium. So they did a pretty good job of finding a way to keep your renewal premium within reason. Because in theory, it would have increased the same as your property limit, but it did not. Part of that would have been the deductible increase on the wind hail. It would have saved you a little money. Even though you didn't have a choice, it saved you a little premium. The other thing too is you did receive in 2021 a dividend of $3,754. And that's kind of neat because they haven't paid a dividend, EMC hasn't paid a dividend on their school book of business for several years. And so now that they're doing that again, it's kind of a positive step forward that hopefully they can continue to do that. It's not a guarantee. I'm not going to tell you that they will get one for 2022, but we're moving in the right direction for a dividend. Questions on any of the coverages, any of the comparisons between last year?
So comparing a few things, like if we had mold occur, do we have coverage that would help us there?
Yeah, you have coverage, and I didn't put it in there, and I tried to get with them before the meeting today, and I couldn't get it. So I'll get you, and I'll get that to Josh. I'll get you the exact limit of what that would be.
For what?
For mold.
Oh,
Yeah, you do, and I'll get that to Josh. But there is coverage for that, yes. And then I don't know what the other one was, Derek. I thought there was another one on there, but there was a difference.
The cyber stuff, are you comfortable with?
Yeah, you know, we had that situation that we were prepared for and did not have to file a claim and was able to handle it in-house. And it'll happen again. Yeah, I guess I'm comfortable with that. Definitely, it's a big difference in the coverage there comparing the two on the level of coverage.
Yeah. And we can increase your cyber to, will we increase it? Was it 2 years ago when we increased your cyber?
We did.
Or I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we can increase it more. As you can see, the cyber is not that expensive. So if we wanted to give you $1 million or $2 million or something that you really felt comfortable with, it's not going to be a lot of premium. It's not going to be a lot more premium, and I can easily get you the exact number for that. But it's just not a big expense, the cyber with that. Any other questions, concerns, comments? I will say that, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with a pool necessarily, but there's certainly nothing wrong with an insurance carrier. It's what they're designed to do, protect you the way you need to be covered. You know what your premiums are, you know what your deductibles are, you know how to manage your risk. There will be no other costs, no assessments, nothing of the sort. I'm not saying there would be an assessment with a pool, but there's always a chance. With EMC, these are the costs. And pools may run lean, EMC runs pretty lean too. Question? Thanks.
Fairly similar coverages, noted some of those differences, 76,021. One premium, 76,859 on the other one. Like I said before, I'd anticipated we would need to move to this pool eventually. I would feel comfortable going that direction. We just got numbers today, so I haven't had time to discuss with you all other than what we've heard here. But I see no reason why I wouldn't just recommend to go with the low number there. Stick with the EMC as long as they're competitive.
It is a low number, but it's also, some of that money stays local, and that 360 has supported our school very well.
I'll make a motion to stay at Ag 360 for $76,021.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the proposed rate on Act 360 for $76,021. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Chase.
Thanks.
Thanks, Trey.
Capital outlay fund.
Nothing's really changed. I did want to review with you. So I've got Suburban purchase. I was talking with, I haven't looked into purchasing the vehicle yet, but I heard they're not making those Ford Transits anymore, so. Carl doesn't-
You're not joking, right?
I know.
Thanks.
We'll still look at options there, but we need to get another vehicle there. I've got on here the video surveillance system upgrade. I've got a quote for that. And an access control system, working on a quote there. And then the north doors, replacing those doors in the north entrance, just because they're not in good working condition. All of those amounts I've put in are school safety grant, which I was pretty much, I've been working on this anyway, but there's a quick turnaround on this school safety grant, but since I was already working on those things anyway.
Josh, I don't mean to interrupt you, but do you think the government will be doing something for the safety on these schools? And if we go spend a bunch of money on these doors, are we gonna end up redoing them right away?
I don't think so. If we had to, the doors need replaced anyway. And I think that entrance, to make it more secure, the best way to do it is to add a door that goes into the office, which is more than just cutting a hole and slapping in a door, it's remodeling that office. So I think that's our best option to make that a controlled entrance. Whether we do that or we don't do that, we still need those doors replaced. So either way, those doors will remain there and be in good shape. And that answers that question. It wouldn't be wasting money. So what I put in for is, what's in our budget right now is $70,500 between those three items in our capital outlay budget. The grant says it'll fund 50%, but the last time they did this, they had so many applications, they prorated it and they funded it at less than a dollar for dollar match. So if it was a dollar for dollar match, we'd be able to add some safe defend upgrades. So right now we have the safes in all the classrooms. This will be putting activation modules at each desk in each office. So everywhere we've got public coming in, there will be a fingerprint swipe right there, accessible. It's still pretty secure. It's a few steps away, but it's right there. And then there would be an upgrade to the server, and it would add a enrollment station, training station. Right now we have to shut the system off to set fingerprints into the system. If teachers want to test their fingerprint, we have to shut the system down. So this will be a separate station where teachers can check and we can enroll fingerprints and these things. So, between the server upgrade and all that will be $13,000. So that makes those three items become 4 items and $41,000 compared to $70,000.
How soon will we know?
this week. I think we'll know. So I've submitted that already. And if they fund it at 25% instead of 50%, we still get all 4 items for cheaper than what those 3 items are. So even if they prorate it, I feel comfortable we can add that safe defend upgrade, and cover all those items with what we've got budgeted right now for those 3.
Video surveillance, you're comfortable that covers every place else in
Not every place, but it'll get us a lot better than where we are. And that will be adding some here in the early ed building, and the places that we're missing. Access control is the door lock system. Our system is very old and it's hard to get serviced.
How many doors would that cover?
15.
And this could be taken care of by the fall?
I don't know. Who
I
knows
thought
on
I'd
anything? Who knows on anything? Yeah. The video surveillance this summer, yes, they could have that done in the fall. Access control, I think so, but not sure. Doors, I have no idea. Safe defend, yeah. So most of it, but. And there was nothing was a lot different on there than what we talked about before. You see our lease purchase payment, we'll have this coming year and the following year, and then we won't have that anymore. It frees up a lot of dollars. And as a reminder, we have a facilities needs assessment in there.
You need locker room, lockers, tennis court, do you think those will be done by next year?
I don't know. I'm trying to go with the warranty situation with the company. Having a hard time with that. Locker room lockers, it's a matter of finding them on both sides. Okay. So if we're comfortable with that, that'd be my recommendation. It's still pretty flexible. If we need to make changes, we can.
Take a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the capital outlay plan as presented.
Okay.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the capital outlay plan as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Student handbook.
All right, some changes to our student handbook. They are highlighted. Here are school arrival. Really, that we'd be doing it just like we've done this year. We used to have all the kids come in the gym. Most of the elementary kids would arrive 7:30 to 7:50, somewhere in that range, and then they would sit there and we'd have them all in the gym, and then the teachers would come over and get them and march them back to their class. And it worked well for years and years, and then we had COVID, and we don't want them all in the gym. And we just set that expectation that don't show up till 7:50 unless you have to. So we have the gym manned for those that ride the bus or need to be there early, but we really didn't have a lot of kids in there. And then we just dismiss them to class at 7:50. It's worked very well, and the teachers are happy with it. The difference is we're not spending all that effort marching the kids in line from here to there. They just go to class and get rolling at 8 o'clock. So nothing magical about that. It's just one of the positive things we learned from COVID is maybe we weren't doing that right. Open lunch, we've done this some, but just clarifying that if there are situations that kids showing up late from lunch or at all, or you caught with a vape pen or whatever discipline, you may lose your open lunch privilege for a period of time. And we will accommodate parents. You know, if a parent does not want their kid to go home for lunch, we'll do our best to monitor that situation. If we have one kid that mom doesn't want him to go home for whatever reason, if the kid leaves, we can call mom and say, hey, kid left. Just let me know. So if there are concerns from parents, we can address those. That change on the tutoring was just, it used to be tied to the after-school program, it's not now. Hall passes, Mr. White's working on getting a digital hall pass system. Explain a little bit how that works. So.
For the digital hall pass, kids would have to, like on their Chromebook, they would have to create a pass to go, and then the classroom teacher would approve it to say they're going to the bathroom or back. So if I want to, I can set it up to where two kids can't leave on the bathroom pass at the same time. So if we see a pattern, and I can go look at patterns, and we can go back and run the program and see what kids always seem to get out of class at the same time. We can set a don't allow that at this time, so they can't set up a time, because part of what we have with vaping, and I found this out from a couple kids that I taught, they would set up a time to meet in the bathroom. It might be 11:43. You know, with the digital hall pass, everybody's going to have to use it. That's going to be a point of emphasis. Every teacher has to enforce that. But that way we can see how often a kid is. I can see how many minutes a kid has missed instruction time, like going to the restroom or the library or whatever parameters we want to put on it. That kind of replaces the old pink piece of paper that we would use, except for now we can have alerts set to, no, you're going to have to wait for a minute because this kid hasn't checked back in. So when they come back to class, the teacher checks, just pushes a button that says that they're back in class.
Will substitutes have access to the system?
We'll have to work on that, but that's my intent, is to have the substitutes will be able to have an account also.
So that's really the change there. Classification of students, in situations where, you know, a kid could have X number of credit hours and according to our handbook policy would be classified as a junior, but technically they could graduate during that year. So just adjusted those numbers to essentially, if the kid could graduate in that period of time, then he'll be classified in that class. So nothing major there. Just tweaking that. Just on the senior work release, just change that will relinquish to may relinquish. We may have a kid that wants to just work 1 hour a day. Well, that kid still has enough classes during the day to be able to participate in activities. If it doesn't interfere with that, we need to be able to say, yeah, that's fine. We don't want a kid to do a work release and then have to quit activities, but they have to be enrolled in 5 credit subjects. Truancy, we've had it in board policy, it just wasn't outlined in our handbook. We just added that. We do have our behavior. We don't outline every consequence and what that every behavior and what that consequence is for that behavior, but just to give an idea of what falls where. We haven't used Saturday school in several years. We talked about using that more to avoid missed class time. For example, you know, use of a vape pen. It's nicotine on campus, in-school suspension or short-term suspension. If it's alcohol, it's more like a short-term suspension. If it involves drugs, it's long-term or expulsion. And where does a fight fall in? So just to give kind of folks an idea of what behavior fits with which consequence. But we still have leeway to make decisions based on the circumstances. Academic dishonesty, just clarified some of that for, Blue. Use Google Docs and share things, just clarifying that policy. Updated with the devices we use. So cell phones, we wanted to clarify the fact that we don't want kids wasting time on their cell phones during class. They're there to learn. We need to be learning when we're in class. The other thing we want to clarify is that if teachers can use them as an instructional tool and can be used very effectively. A quick example, we did a little lesson on fixing a hose when we had our skills day, and I asked the kids, what does a garden hose cost? No idea. Well, look it up. In a matter of 10 seconds, somebody's got $40 Home Depot, I can get a garden hose. So it can be used effectively, and then we put them away. Anyway, the point is, they can be used, but we want to make sure we're supporting the teachers also if they're struggling with that in the classroom. And the goal here is we want to protect the teaching and learning environment in the classroom. So we're talking about junior high and high school. It's used at the discretion of the teachers, but it needs to be used for instructional purposes. They may be required to check them in during a class period and leave them there. They should be powered off and silent unless they're being used for instructional purposes. You can use them at lunch, passing period, before and after school. Should not be used in the restroom and locker room areas for obvious security concerns. Clarifies that we're not responsible for cell phones. They need to take care of them themselves. So if it disrupts the educational environment, if the students are not following the rules, using them when they shouldn't, bullying or harassing. If that happens in the classroom, teachers can assign a detention. If there's further issues that the teacher has, it's turned over to the office. There will be a consequence of a detention and then returned to the student. If there's other incidents, there will be further consequences depending on the circumstances, and the parent's going to have to come in and get that from them. Elementary students, for the most part, we don't have a huge issue with it. Usually if they have to have them, mostly sixth graders, they're participating in athletics, and then they're leaving in their locker. And, we don't have enough trouble with that we just handle it on a case-by-case basis. One thing we've looked at, this isn't really a matter of handbook policy, but having in every classroom a box where students slide their cell phones in. You come in, put your cell phone in the spot, sit down, let's get to work. Also having a small charging station that if kids need to charge their phone, it's right there. Put it in the box or put it on the charger and leave it there. Get it at the end of the hour and move on. So one thing we talked about is just getting that for everybody, make that the expectation that that's what we do. And if a particular teacher wants to use them for an instructional purpose, then okay, get them out, let's use them. So anyway, that's our policy changes related to that and some of our ideas. Anything else on that?
I guess last meeting, somebody said they'd like to know what the teachers thought. Mr. Bauer sent out a questionnaire to all the teachers and shared the results. And his question was, what type of phone policy would you like to see put in place? No phones allowed in school with a zero tolerance. No phones allowed in class, but they're allowed during LS if they're in good standing, or continue the present system. Out of the 15 responses, 4 of them said zero tolerance policy. 9 of them said no phones in class, but allow them to have them in passing periods and during their LS time. And then the other 2 said continue with the present system. I had a discussion with faculty at the end of the year, and just to have a verbal discussion on it, and really it stayed about the same. It didn't really come out in the discussion with all of the faculty there, but I did have a couple that came to me afterwards, and actually 4. And 2 of them said, I absolutely want to be able to ban them from my room. The other 2 said, this is, the classroom management issue, and want to be able to manage it in my classroom. I said, so you guys had asked for that information at the last meeting, and that's what I got. And I think this sets everybody up. The expectation when you walk in the door, and I think every teacher needs to say, you have to turn it in when you come in the classroom. To put it in this box or put it on the charger. Those are your 2 choices. If I'm going to allow you to use it for educational purpose, then I'll have you get your phone and use it as an educational purpose.
So why don't we put that in the policy, that they have to have them over there instead of leaving it vague?
Well, we don't put anywhere in our handbook policy that teachers must do this. So,
But we're saying,
I think
can we say
policy-wise-
students must do this?
Yeah.
well, but then we're setting up the behavior expectation of the teacher, what the teacher requires in their classroom. That'd be like saying, we need to put in our student handbook policy that you need to have 15 minutes of homework in every class period. Then that puts it on the teacher that they need to assign 15 minutes of homework.
I don't see that that's the same.
I'm always leery about putting anything in the handbook policy that requires teachers, that requires teachers to do X, Y, or Z in their classroom. It's a
I
matter of
understand
craft.
that.
I understand what you're
From a
saying,
teaching-
but
Yeah.
From a teaching standpoint, I totally agree with you.
agreed.
This be a little different, in my opinion.
I
Me
think
too.
we leave it lenient. I don't know. I think we need the boxes in every classroom. And I don't think that's an option for a teacher to say, no, I don't want one, or I'm not going to put it out. I think it has to be there.
I'm a little confused. I'm not a technological person. Can I not look on their Chromebook on what a garden hose costs?
They can, yeah.
So what's the difference?
Okay, and I'll just give you a quick example. Mrs. Dixon, or no, it was Mrs. Seekes before she left. She had a project that they did where they used their GPS to go look up different things, to figure out distances and stuff. Okay, GPS isn't on the Chromebook. There are,
One situation.
Yeah.
But she could
It's-
have them go up and get their phones when it gets to that point.
right,
We can put everything we want in the handbook policy. It all comes down to what we do in practice. And I'm always leery about putting anything into policy that says we're going to do this, and that's how teachers must do things.
To me, this is an issue where we had a policy that wasn't being used. And so if the policy wasn't being used and this doesn't put any backing behind the policy or force a change, then it still gives the teachers a leniency for what they want. But we're saying on the side that we want this other rule, we just aren't putting it on paper. I'd rather have it set in my mind, but.
So we want to put, the recommendation is to put in the policy that teachers must require students to check in their phones in their classroom unless it's being used for instructional purposes. And then we're still stuck with, okay, what's instructional purposes? And-
Sure.
And that's where I'm not sure I completely agree that there is such a thing as an instructional purpose for a cell phone outside of a Chromebook.
Well,
Just personally, that's my personal.
Here's where it gets where you could question just about everything. is it an instructional purpose that I can get my cell phone when I've got 30 minutes of math homework to do in class, and that helps me concentrate if I listen to music? Is that an instructional purpose? To me, that is kids learning, it's helping that kid through. Now, it's a slippery slope, but
I think we provided them with an electronic device when we did the Chromebook, so I don't see a point in having that available.
And the Chromebooks can also be used to, as a distraction. I mean,
Yeah.
they are a distraction also.
Right, and so we're trying to eliminate one of the two distractions that they
And
have.
then, you know, another example,
We're saying they're,
Mrs. Clark, her 6th hour in economics, she had several kids who had Chromebooks that were dead or nearly dead by the time they got to her class period. So,
well, that's an issue that we can remedy that doesn't have anything to do with this, in the conversation of cell phones, right? We should be charging them during the day or plugging them in, right? I mean, that,
we could, I mean, yeah, you can go back and forth with this a little bit.
no.
well, we'll put in whatever policy the board wants. I guess I'm coming with this recommendation, and let me get it all comes down to what we do.
I think this is gonna make it easier on the staff, student body in general. If we hand the phones in at the front of the class, and if the instructor thinks that he or she needs them for instructional purposes, then we can use them. And then the student can get them out and go in between class and class. I don't think we need a cell phone in class.
Then it keeps it constant.
That's right, everyone's on the same page. Administration and
I
teachers.
don't think we're disagreeing with that. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I'm just always leery to put everything in policy that we need to do specifically, and we become a slave to policy and not make decisions, let the professionals make the decisions in their classroom. But this is the expectation. You turn in the phones at the beginning of class, and unless there's an instructional reason you need to have them, they stay there. You just didn't put that down.
I think, my
Here.
opinion, we added in there on this one. I mean, I know what you're saying. I just think we've had too big of an issue in this.
I don't want to put it on the teachers. If we've got an expectation that students will turn their phones in at the beginning of each class, then if there's an offense, then we've got some way to deal with the students who are not cooperating. But if we put it on the teachers that they will do this, then we might have to talk to teachers, some of the teachers, about whether, some parent's gonna come up and say, my kid can use it in Mr. Meyer's class, but not in Mr. White's. And I want to be able to text my kid. I think leaving it the way it is now helps us work better with the students and the teachers and the parents to make this clear. I'm like with Josh, I don't want to policy everybody to death. This is the expectation. It's written right there that you're not to use it unless it's for an educational purpose. And this is what happens if you violate that. I see it there.
I think we're all on the same page with what we want here.
I just don't want to put it in there.
My concern with this is not the vehicle, the student handbook is not the vehicle to tell teachers what they need to do.
I think it's the vehicle that puts our policy in front of parents, though. So a parent on enrollment, this is the policy. Here's what your students expected to do when they enter a classroom versus here's our policy. But yet we have this other rule that your students have to follow that you don't know about because it's not here for a parent to look up and see. So if I have a parent come to me with a cell phone issue, I can tell them the thing, but yeah, we don't have that in the handbook. Versus if it's there, the expectation's the same across to every class, across to every student. There's no change.
So simple change. Right here, the expectation is that cell phones will be checked on the specific location for the class period. Just make that change. The expectation is that cell phones will be checked into a specified location for the class period. Instead of teachers may require, it is expected that students' cell phones be checked into a specified location for the class period.
I can live with that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write that down. All right. We all comfortable with that then? All right. I think we're all saying the same thing, just,
Yeah. Okay.
and it's an issue we have to deal with, and every school's dealing with it, and part of the issue is we need to teach them to use them responsibly.
Right.
It's
parent
part of their
issue,
lives,
first off.
it's part of their lives, they have it with them all the time, and teaching them to use it responsibly. And it's not feasible to check them into the office. It's not. Can you imagine a school safety situation?
Well, that's a good percentage of the
Active
issues
shooter,
that I've
nobody's
dealt
got a
with
cell
have been
phone.
parents texting their kids and their kids texting their parents.
Yeah. Tobacco and nicotine delivery devices. So we just wanted to clarify the, it said, I don't want to be a slave to policy. We try to keep things general so we can make decisions based on the circumstances. But we've had enough issues with this and we want it fixed. So first time violations, if you have tobacco or a vape pen that only has nicotine in it. So if the vape pen has drugs in it, we're talking something different. That's a completely separate thing. We're just talking nicotine or just the device. Minimum consequence of 1 day in school suspension and loss of open lunch privileges for 10 days. And parent guardian will be contacted and will be referred to law enforcement as needed. And we'll work through that with our law enforcement. And then after that, we'll be out of school suspension and further loss of lunch privileges. So we just wanted to clarify that one. It's been an issue, just to be consistent. So there's that. So I'd recommend that the handbook policy changes with the exception of what we talked about with cell phone.
Handbook policy is amended.
Yep.
Mr. President, I move that
Just a
the
minute.
board.
I'd like to back up just a little bit.
Yeah.
I know this is a very uncomfortable subject, but I think this board ought to reconsider open lunch. I've had parents actually tell me it's 30 minutes, basically, and you feel more comfortable if the student body stayed at school for the junior high and high school. I even throw out there, Maxville and Stafford both have closing irons. In the past, which I think is a good idea. Maybe second semester, seniors could have open lunch hour, but everyone else ought to stay in school. And I guess it's not a popular comment to talk about or a subject to talk about, but I guess it's what this board decides. But I'm in favor of the closing iron and the policy change.
One thing logistically, right now, is it's not feasible to have them eat lunch at the same time. So with our schedule, the way it's set up, junior high and high school have lunch at the same time, we can do that because so many kids go home for lunch. We cannot feed those kids in that amount of time, so we would have to redo our entire schedule. So that would be We would have to go back to square one on our schedule for the fall.
I mean, I think it'd be easy, but
Yeah.
Stafford does it, actually, so.
No, if we had a different schedule, it would be easy to close the lunch hour. Closing it is not hard. It's the way we have our schedule set up now that we've already established for the fall. That we would have to change
I
that.
see what you're
And
saying.
it's very complicated when we move the junior high and high school lunch away from each other. But basically, the entire schedule has to be redone. All of the PE classes and art classes, we share teachers, and it'd be a logistic nightmare to do that right now.
Probably have to move our elementary to start earlier, wouldn't
Yeah, I don't know. We used to have them separate. There's a way to do it, it's just,
What's the span of our lunch hours right now? Is it like from 11 o'clock to 1? Or
11 to 1-ish, yeah. But,
I'd like to see us look at it for.
12:35, 11 to 12:35.
If we can't do it for this next year, if we can at least put it on the table to discuss for the following year,
before the schedules?
before the schedules are set.
I like the open lunch hour because my kids always come home and that's when they can visit with their parents. Kind of gives them some one-on-one time that after school they're busy with their activities and then they come home and they're tired and do their homework and go to bed. And I think you're trying to penalize kids that aren't in trouble. You know, if you're having trouble with kids on the open lunch hour, get those kids and close their lunch hour. Don't pick on the 98% that are doing fine.
The other thing, Carl, you brought up people, comfortable with their kids, and we're gonna try and accommodate that. If a parent calls and says, I want my kid to stay at school, I can't watch every exit, but we can look at the roll at lunch and see if that kid stayed for lunch or not. Because now we're gonna be taking roll at lunch. The last 2 years we've done it. Last year and a half.
So is that something we can tell parents about, that, if you would like your kid to stay here for lunch, we can do our best to watch them, I understand.
And that, I'll just have the secretaries go through the kids that ate lunch. And some of the kids are gonna say, well, I was sitting out outside or whatever. And that's gonna have to be between them and their parents.
Yeah, when my youngest gets in high school, you will have to keep him here every minute. of the day.
But that's part of the reason why we decided, to add that verbiage, and we'll try to accommodate that when a parent asks for it.
and, coming back late from lunch, and trying to do it, it's already against policy to show up late, but
And I have
trying to do
that's
a
me.
do
I
a
have to
better
do
job
that.
of tracking that and making sure that, if you're showing up late from lunch, then you don't get this anymore. And addressing those issues, that if we got bad behaviors going on, parents have kids that they think shouldn't be out and about. Let's accommodate those parents, let's take care of those kids that are doing bad things, let's not let those kids, if they can't get back on time, they'll lose their open lunch.
So when they come back from open lunch, is it one door that they have to come through, or are there, okay.
One of the persons that contacted me about closing the lunches said, kids that are on honor roll, if you make it to honor roll, then you can have open lunch. But kids that need to,
I'm sorry.
Nightmare.
Honor roll,
Part of
honor
it.
roll does not tell you what their behavior is.
I know
I'm
it
sorry,
doesn't,
that
but
is
that was this particular person's
That's,
responsibility, response to,
I
how to
understand.
determine,
Do what?
that was his response to,
Yeah.
how do you determine who gets exceptions and who doesn't?
You got a great kid that really struggles and gets C's.
Yeah, it is a concern when we have kids making bad decisions, but it's something to talk about, sure.
We're
gonna make a motion there.
Well, thank you.
Sorry.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the 2022-23 student handbook as amended.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the 22-23 student handbook as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Student accident insurance.
This one's pretty easy. We have our accident insurance. Premium is $13,327. What we have is a $250 deductible plan. Covers some things if a kid is hurt at a school or a school activity. Covers some things, help out with the deductible. It doesn't cover everything, it's not primary. Then we have a secondary plan that if there's more severe accident, it's a $6,500 deductible plan, up to $25,000. Again, covers some things. And then we have a separate plan that with Activities Association is catastrophic insurance that covers over $25,000. So it's severe accident. We also use that CASHA plan and spend a few $100 extra to cover all the kids. So we're pretty well covered. I'm not going to go through all the benefits and what it covers, but it's helpful to a lot of families. Here's our premium situation, what's happened with that. We were with another company. It just got out of hand. Reduced some coverage, then we switched companies and almost cut it in half. We use it quite a bit because we tell the parents about it and it gets used. So we've been gradually increasing. We had added deductible a couple of years ago, but no increase this year, so I recommend that we stick with that.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the proposal for student accident insurance from K&K in the amount of $13,327.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the proposal for student accident insurance from K&K in the amount of $13,327. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, negotiated agreement.
We met, Debbie and Sean met with the teachers negotiating team and several things to talk about. So moving our driver's ed salary on the supplemental schedule from $25 to $30 an hour. That puts it more in line with what area schools are. We have a CTE grant that's paying some stipends to teachers for work this summer. Lisa got that grant together. She talked with me about that, and that becomes tricky when any dollar that we pay teachers needs to be a part of the negotiated agreement. I can't just say, hey, Mrs. McAllister's doing a great job, I'm going to pay her a little extra. It has to be connected to a negotiated agreement. So we just said that the stipends will be paid according to that grant, just to make it simple on that. Planning period, the concern was that if we split a planning period, teachers are supposed to get 50 minutes. It shouldn't be less than 25 minutes. Just specifying that in wording. Leave time, the teachers had requested that instead of sick and discretionary leave, or sick days and personal days, and I have 3 personal days, 10 sick days. They were asking to make them all discretionary. We were worried that that sets the expectation that we don't want teachers gone for those 13 days unless they have to be. But personal days you have, we want you to take those. Get away, use it, and, that's fine, but we don't want that expectation to be 13 days. So what we talked about, right now they can convert 3 of their sick days to personal days. Nobody does it, nobody really even knows about it. But so what we discussed was changing it from 3 personal days to 5 personal days, because they could convert and make it 6 anyway. So make it 3 to 5. and then moving the sick days from 10 to 8. So same amount of leave time, it's just 5 and 8 rather than 10 and 2. And give them the option to, if they want to carry over some sick days, they can convert those to sick days if they need to. If they want to carry them over, because they can't carry the person anymore.
How many can you carry over total?
Sick days, 90.
90?
And then we pay them for, if they're above that, $20 a day. Adding some language to the bereavement leave, it refers to family and close relatives. Just adding something about, anyone living in the house. If it's a significant other that they're not, isn't a spouse, then should make an exception for that. Just an exception for if a teacher loses their spouse, we're not going to make them come back in 3 days. We're just adding that wording. Cover the health insurance increase, which is 7 or 8%. I don't know what that percentage was, and adding $1,000 on the base. That gets us to $40,000. So, you guys, anything on that? It's affordable. We probably won't be able to do that much next year, and that puts us in that situation. We won't be able to do as much next year, but, and it's 2.7%, so it's not as much as inflation. But it's all you can do. So, everybody comfortable with that? No motion there. I'm going to need to type up the agreement so we can ratify it. We just did that today, so if we're all comfortable with that, we'll just plan on, if the teachers ratify that, then we'll go ahead and start contracts and stuff, and then we'll formally approve it next month. Okay?
Sounds good. All right, disposal of excess property.
Mr. White and Adam have been working on some shop equipment to get rid of. So you have I think you have that on, it says book 1 maybe is on the title or something.
Yeah.
There's a list of, looks like this. We just got these in recently, so these were sealed bids at the bottom here. You'll have to look at the TV for those. You guys don't have those on there, do you?
No.
So a planer, a shaper, and a welder, $850 for Aaron Hahn, $650 for Aaron Hahn, and $275 for Matt Fisher on the welder. So $2,800 plus those ones at the bottom. So we'll put that money back in the shop program. So I recommend approval of that list for disposal. Anybody want to make that motion?
You guys ready? Are you still looking at it? Wish you had
I just finished.
wish you had a little higher bid on a couple of them, didn't you?
It's a lot of stuff that is just in the way.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the list of excess property for disposal.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve the list of excess property for disposal. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, administration and staff.
I mentioned that $1,000 on the base and steps and columns and all that. For teachers is 2.7%, so I would recommend that same pay raise for Mr. White and the classified staff.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve a pay raise of 2.7% for classified staff and the high school principal for 2022 and 2023 fiscal year.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve a pay raise of 2.7% for classified staff and the high school principal for the 22-23 fiscal year. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried. Okay. Board policy updates.
You should have those as a separate document. I haven't reviewed these enough to go over them with you for this first reading. There's several here, usually the ones in June are bigger, so mainly just providing them to you now, so we have time to review them, and I'll have specific recommendations next month for final approval. Unless you want me to read them.
I was smiling because I had started through, and I'll be honest with you, I got a little sleepy.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Josh. Communications. All right, board member activities and reports. Debbie.
I was here instead of the co-op last month, so they did have a nice reception for Dr. Bob.
No.
Nope. Nothing for me. Administrative, Mr. White.
Hey, we talked earlier about the digital hall pass. That's another thing I visited with the teachers and kind of went over, and I think pretty much all of the teachers agreed that would help manage who's in the hall and stuff. So we're gonna go forward with that. It's actually cheaper than buying the agendas that we used to buy to give kids. It's cheaper to have that per kid, so not too bad. Graduation, I thought went really good, other than having 8 people. I thought all eight of those valedictorians did a nice job of keeping the story short. But I do think Preston kind of got stiffed on one of his bids when he was auctioning. I think somebody didn't pay that $5 million. Hey, golf was interesting. State golf. Connor went to state golf. Played the first day, made it to the second day, and then they got rained out. So with state golf, what they do is they just go with that one day's golfing, and he didn't do great, so I don't think he ended up placing anything, but he did make it to the second day, and we're sure he would have done better. State track, wow, what a weekend for our kids. Girls 4x8, boys 4x8 had their best times they turned in all year. Placed 3rd at state. Preston got 4th in the 300 hurdles, and our boys 4x8 got 4th, I guess, and then our girls 4x4 got 3rd. They all represented really well. It was a pretty amazing day, weekend, I guess, for those kids. Had an issue with hotels. The hotel we were scheduled at said we didn't have rooms, and we had confirmations that said that we did, but we had to go to a hotel that was much less nice, I guess, but our kids did well with it. They just went out and competed. I told them we're going to stay in that Super 8 forever from now on because they perform so well. No, I was proud of our kids. It just happened. That's the way it is, and they just went out and competed. I did talk to you last time. I think one of the things we're looking at with VAPE is education. I'm trying to bring in a program for not just VAPE, but different things. I'm going to try and do something once a month next year. I don't know if I'll have a chance to do that. I kind of had that planned when COVID hit, and then nobody was coming in, or we wouldn't allow people in. So I'm kind of getting back on track with that. And then, we've already talked about it, but BAK's here. It's a crazy festivity over there. So I'm hoping David remembered to turn the sprinklers on.
I did.
You did?
I did.
Okay. All right. Other than that, any questions? I mean, finishing up. Still think we ended up with a good year. This is the best end to a year we've had since 2019. The most normal, I should say. So, thank you guys for all your support all year long. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer.
Driver's education, we've got Mr. Smith doing that for Maxville and Stafford. I don't remember how many, dozen or so from Stafford and 5 or 6 from Maxville, doing all the coursework here and then driving those other locations. So it'll be busy. busy time for him. Chronic absenteeism is one of those things, if a student misses more than 10% of days, he or she is considered chronically absent. We keep that data and we look at it each year. We've been running 9 or 10%, I think, in a typical year. But after a year-end report, this report populates. And I looked at it and I thought, that cannot be right. So I went digging in, and it's not a good format for the data here, but so each grade level. So all of our kids, 104 out of the 327 chronically absent. 31% is ridiculous. And I went and looked at kindergarten, surely not, 30%. Sure enough, 7 of them missed 10% or more of the days. Why do you think that is? Most days were missed because of quarantines. So we have a very high number. The state's number went up quite a bit too. 23%, so ours, 32%, so significantly higher than the state even. But we had a significant number of quarantines, and a lot of them went, they were quarantined because mom had COVID. Well, then that went 2 weeks, and then another 2 weeks because they had quarantine after that. So every time there was one of those situations, that's one kid that's chronically absent. Attendance was worse this year. Just one of our areas of focus, that kids showing up to school. But the quarantines and all that isn't really allowing us to see the data about, what about the kids that we didn't make stay home because of quarantines? Where our problem is. We know anecdotally a few of those. But anyway, that's concerning data. But a lot of it will be rectified since we're not quarantining. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that data up to you. That was alarming.
So did you say the percentage was typically 9 to 10? Is that what you
Yeah.
said? Okay.
Yeah. And that doesn't matter if it's excused or unexcused. You have chicken pox and you're out 2 weeks, and then you have 2 other days sick, that's chronic. Achievement data. So the people you elected to represent you in Topeka require a needs assessment to build our budget. They just want to make sure there's accountability, that you all are looking at what we actually need as a school district and not just blindly throwing money out to all these people that we employ. So each year we look at what our needs are, grade level, who can we hire, all of those things we look at. But part of that is to review state assessments. And we're going to do a little bit of that here. I'll try to be brief, but we'll do more of it when we look at our budget. So based on our needs assessment and looking at our state assessment results, we need to identify the barriers that must be overcome for each student to achieve grade level proficiency on assessment. And the budget actions, what are we going to do with our money to remove those barriers? And the amount of time it takes for each student to achieve grade level proficiency on state assessments. We're not looking at any other achievement data or measure of success, just state assessments. And the one big barrier to achieving grade level proficiency is not being in that grade. I'm a 3rd grader moving into 4th grade. I'm behind on 4th grade standards. Why? Because I've never learned this stuff. So every year our kids will be behind, and we catch them up. That's how it happens. So it's not a problem to look at test scores, and we do. But I do want to point out some things to you here. and we need to review this because the law says we have to. So proficiency standards. I remember a decade ago, the anti-public education people were saying cut scores are too low, our standards are too low, achievement is inflated. We have all these kids doing really well on state assessments, but they're not successful. Then we raised proficiency standards, which are the highest in the nation, by the way. Now, those same people are saying, students are not meeting the standards. So we raised the standards, now we're not meeting them, now we're failing. So this gives a graphical image of graphical representation of state assessment scores. So student scores are 1, 2, 3, or 4. What they've told us is 1 and a 2 or above is grade level. 3 and 4 is college career ready. So what they're asking us to do is say, what's it going to take for all of our kids to get to a level 3 or 4? Well, that means that every single kid would be scoring a 22 on the ACT. This is just for oral reading. That's an admirable goal, but to say that we're not successful if we don't have every single kid achieving a 22 on the ACT is silly. So, just to give you an idea how high the standards are in Kansas, there's a lot of stuff here. So, this is the range of proficiency, what we're calling it. So, that's just a made-up term. What's proficient in Kansas compared to what's proficient in Missouri? Two different things. So, each state, compared to a national test, where are those proficiency ratings? That's in here. Ours is way up here, highest in the nation. This is for 8th grade reading. So what people are saying is that only 25% of our kids are proficient. What's that? Level 3 and 4. So we're not doing well enough. Those people that are saying we've raised our standards so high, now we're not achieving. 25% of our kids are achieving at that level. Florida is one we always look to that we need to do it like Florida. Look where their standards are compared to ours. If our kids were measured by Florida standards, we'd have 57% at that proficiency level. Our neighbors in Missouri, if we had their standards, it'd be 62%. And by the way, in Missouri, their kids are actually 47%. So, are we doing bad? Well, if you say 25% of our kids in Kansas are proficient, but 47% are proficient in Missouri, does that mean Missouri is doing better than us in 8th grade reading? Obviously, no. So, what data you look at? So, state assessments are very important. It's a good tool to look at, but does it mean a kid's going to be successful or not? Point is, if we have kids, so this is the class of 2019, kids that scored a level 1 on either the math or reading, we still had 47 and 43% of those kids go to college, and almost 80% or above 80% of them successful. One measure does not dictate whether a kid's going to be successful or not. So important data, but that can't be the only thing we're looking at. How are we doing on the state assessments? I wish better, but we're doing okay. So the blue is us, the orange is state. So for English language arts, as far as grade level, we're above the state average, declining a little bit. How do you measure the effect of COVID in there? I don't know, that's tough. Math, same kind of look. And science. Science is a little more volatile just because we only do 3 grades. So, I mentioned that we need to identify the barriers to achieve grade level proficiency. That's what they're saying, but the statute actually says above level 2. So we're talking level 3 and 4, 22 on the ACT. every kid. What barriers must they overcome? How long is it going to take them to get there? This is the data that we're looking at, levels 3 and 4. When you look at each building separately, so these are percentage of kids at level 3 and level 4 from last year. We've got updated data for this year, but it's not, I don't know if it's 100% finalized. I think it is, but. Other measures of success, how are we doing? This looks like we're not doing very well with English and math. Reading. These are the improvements we've made from fall to spring. The red would be our tier 3, most at risk of failing, well below grade level. Yellow would be borderline. The goal is 80%, less than 5% in the red. Above 80 at the green. So, junior high, 7th and 8th grade. According to this data, we've got 90% of our kids on grade level there. So, other measures are important. ACT. So I guess the example our commissioner used at our conference recently was KU only played 7 or 8 players in the national championship. They did not play their entire roster. Would they have done better or worse if they played the entire roster, or let alone the entire student body at the University of Kansas? This data looks bad from 2020 to 2021 because we're testing every kid. The ACT test was given to every kid. Before, we were just giving that to the kids that wanted to take it, that knew they were going to college. But we think the data that we get from testing all the kids helps us. We want to make sure that we're doing what we can to get the curriculum to every kid, not just the ones that think I'm going to college, or leave out the ones that think I don't think I can go to college. So as a state, comparing to states, this is a list of states that 76 to 100% of the students are testing. Kansas is one of the, I think they're 5th in the nation as far as performance on the SAT. Does that mean Kansas is doing really well? Only 2% of our kids take the SAT. That's the top end of kids that are taking it for a reason. That doesn't mean we're doing great with the SAT. So comparing to states that test a lot of kids, so this shows you how we're doing in the state compared to states that are testing most of their kids. Everyone is higher. So, post-secondary success, another measure we need to look at. How successful are our kids? Average graduation rate, 92.3% compared to the state average of 87%. Kids that are successful 2 years out of high school in post-secondary education. Got a degree, got a certificate, continuing on, 55.6% compared to the state average of 50%. So I'll review that a little bit more with you. We'll identify those barriers and then go through that needs assessment with our budget. So there's an additional step there. Any quick questions on any of that? Board vacancy, Darren will be moving at some point when a board member moves out of the member district. So he will be moving from his current Board of Education district. to a different one, he vacates that spot. So, according to law, this board can appoint someone to fill that spot, to fill out his term. If there's more than 2 years left, it would just be to the next election, but he's got less than 2 years left, so it'd be for the remainder of that term. So that should be later this fall. Just heads up that we'll have that. So Darren is in that districts 3 and 6, which is the south half of the city limits, and pretty much everything south of First Street out in the country. Daycare, still working on that, getting that going, working on getting that kitchenette added. We got it, parents and teachers moved out of there. Strategic planning board attorney, we're keeping those on here, so they're fresh in my mind, but I've got no movement on those.
What's the July organization?
Oh, sorry. All of our appointments, next month we have our organizational meeting where we do,
So that's good.
Yeah, there's that one next.
yeah, let's do it. And I'll send this to you in a Friday note before then. Scholarship committee, negotiations team, those things we need to identify. So I'll send this list to you. So be thinking about those things.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Executive session.
Yeah, I think it's fairly straightforward. 5 minutes?
Sure.
Talk fast.
Mr. President, I move that the board go into executive session to discuss specific individuals being hired or resigning and the performance of specific employees pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under KLMA with Mr. Meyer and Mr. White.
Yeah.
To
Sorry.
be included, and that will return to open session at 8:57 in this room.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that the board go into executive session to discuss specific individuals being hired or resigning and performance of specific employees pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under KOMA, with Mr. Meyer and Mr. White to be included, and will return to open session at 8:57 in this room. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
I have a letter of resignation from Darlene Binky here for her classroom position. Do you recommend approving that? So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the resignation of Darlene Binky. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same
She
sign.
needs to, or you need to change the supplemental thing in and take her off the yearbook.
Yeah.
So we need to get a new yearbook person.
Okay. Motion approved. All right, thanks.
I'd recommend hiring Oscar Portillo as custodian.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to hire Oscar Portillo as custodian. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
I'd recommend hiring Tyler Axman as junior high head volleyball coach.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to hire Tyler Axman as junior high volleyball coach. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
We'll have next month our budget approval with a needs assessment, state assessment, school review, organizational meeting, strategic planning, and board attorney. Need to approve our employee handbook too. Those things coming up.
All right, thank you.
Mr. President, I move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.